is a fellow AOCM from Ludwig Maximilian Universität Munich. She is a fellow of Indian Board of Oral and Maxillary Surgeons. She is an adjunct member of AOCM of Community Development Commission Asia Pacific, AOCM of Study Club Lead India, AOCM of Regional Faculty Asia Pacific. So she has been very thickly involved in AOCM of activities throughout the nation and beyond over the years. At present, she is a consultant maxillofacial surgeon at Sri Gokulam Medical College and also a professor of oral and maxillary surgery at PMS College of Dental Sciences, Trivandrum. Welcome, Dr. Yeshaswini. You may please start.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you. Thank you very much. For all the others, I would like to say Ravi was my super senior when I actually joined for VDS. So it feels very nice to share the podium with you. Thanks, Ravi. So I also thank Kerala AOMSI for extending this invitation. And when Dr. Akhilesh actually asked me if I could do this to benefit the postgraduates, I was like, yeah, sure, because I had done this as part of the AOMSI orientation program last year, and I'm more than happy to do it. But I wasn't really sure how it would be received. I'm happy to say that it has been received well, and we have very known faces amongst us. So thank you, Kerala AOMSI. Thank you, Akhilesh. Thank you, Mr. President, Dr. Muhammad Yahya, who is not here with us, I guess. I'm just going to share screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I'd like to start by quoting William Osler, a famous Canadian physician, who said, "It is astonishing with how little reading a doctor can practice medicine, but it is not astonishing how badly he may do it." Right? So these were words of wisdom that was first told by him. And the history actually of what we're going to speak today is about how effectively can we present the journal club. Like Ravi rightly said, various units are doing it in ways that they think is fine. So let us actually see how exactly this is meant to be, as was introduced by these famous people. So the history goes something like this. So Sir James Paget, he introduced this concept of journal club. And he sat and read articles with his students in a baker's shop, So while he read articles with his students in the baker's shop, he also would order some snacks. So traditionally, we have units that actually distribute snacks when a journal club or a seminar is actually presented. So that's how this actually came into being. And this was when he was at the Bartholomew's Hospital, London. And way back in, say, 1875, I might not be getting the year perfectly correct, pardon me on that, but Sir William Osler, for the very first time, he conducted a formal a journal club at McGill's University in Canada. And thereon in 1889, he actually organized the first journal club at Baltimore Hospital. Yeah. So with this small introduction, if we just move on, what is a journal club? What is it meant to be? It's basically an academic meeting wherein a bunch of individuals who are in the same profession discuss various published articles, and a platform it is to share ideas which are based on collective scientific experience. So I think this is quite self-explanatory now. So you're basically trying to discuss on new techniques and ideas, and also trying to see if your idea of in science can actually be put forward. So why have a journal club? Most of the postgraduates today and all of us, we're all introduced to journal club when we're doing postgraduation. So this basically, reading journals usually starts as a part of our curriculum, which is like a forced activity on us, then we have to do it. And then eventually when we finish, and for those of us who are no longer in academia, what happens is we fall out of journals unless we are very self-initiated to continue reading. And for those busy practitioners, there's absolutely no time. So the only kind of reading material they depend on would be that which is provided by, the representatives who come and give, which tends to be kind of a biased research material to kind of facilitate their product. So, but then why is it important? Why should we have journal clubs, right? So journal clubs are important to stay abreast with current scientific literature so that we can all do evidence-based practice. right? And it also improves our critical appraisal skills, which is needed when we want to actually think about conducting a study for ourselves, or if you want to guide somebody who's interested in conducting a study. And like I said, evidence-based practice, it's a lifelong learning. See, all of us, if we are under the impression that once we finish our NDS, we are done studying, we are sadly mistaken, because learning is actually lifelong. There is no end to it. It also develops leadership skills, presentation skills, and it disseminates a lot of new medical developments, right, amongst peers. So we are a bunch of us sitting together, and also with our students. So we discuss new ideas, inspires new research studies, and it also broadens a lot of professional networking. Say, let's say you find a particular study very important and you want to liaise with the author. So there is always a corresponding author which is given, whose address is given, and you can actually liaise with them. So how does one structure a journal club? Yeah, what constitutes the structure of a journal club? So we can have various ways. You can have the classic form wherein the trainee, you select a particular person to present the journal. And whoever is a senior clinician, he actually selects this particular article and says, okay, you do this, and then you circulate and they present the slideshow, etc. Or you can have in a flipped classroom pattern wherein you have a team who usually has a senior clinician who facilitates the journal club process, because there has to be some facilitated discussions to come out with ideas. And the trainees volunteer to present, usually not. Usually the trainees are selected, or they're just assigned to present, because trainees seldom volunteer. And then you have to also, in addition to preparing the presentation, you have to critique the paper. Advanced circulation of the article is utmost important, and it begins with small discussions, and whoever is the trainee, you need to lead this entire group discussion to a nice closure. And sometimes you can also go onto the digital platform. So digital platform was something I was handling for 2 years with AOMSI as the Pan-India Journal Club series, which is now taken over by Sushmita. So that is a similar process wherein there are volunteers. This is not forced. This is a volunteer method. So you can have various ways of doing it. But whatever it is, how can we best make a journal club presentation? So what are the steps to an effective presentation? The first important thing is to select a stimulating article, right? So what goes into selecting a stimulating article? One is the quality of the journal. So if you want to address or see how best to see the quality of the journal, you can look at the impact factor, how much it has been read and how well it is read, and also a little into what is the acceptance rate, what is the rate of rejection. Because if it has a very easy or 100% acceptance rate, then there is not much scrutinizing, or there's not much filtering that is obviously happening. So that gives you an idea regarding the journal that you're actually picking the article from. And how relevant is the article? Is it interesting? Is it clinically relevant to you? And is the problem approach that they are propagating, is it innovative? Does it use multiple techniques? So for this, you already have to be a little aware of what is existing in literature, because then you know that, okay, this is a new method and this is a little innovative, so we can try that. And it should be analytical, it should be analytical, and it should not be very descriptive. And let's say, what are the fields in which this can be applied? More than one is good, because it actually gives a diverse scope of applications. Review articles, no, it is not encouraged, because review articles basically is a in-depth literature presentation. So what can you discuss in a journal club on a review article? So only original research is advised, and it is also to be promoted. And you should obviously not, just for the sake of criticizing, we all have a tendency to think to be critical means to find fault. It is also to appreciate. It's not just finding fault. So just because an article you read has a lot of obvious flaws and it's easy to criticize, you should not pick that article up, because then it doesn't really make sense, right? So do not select review articles and do not pick up obviously skewed articles. So where and how does one find these articles? So this can be quite a challenge to postgraduates who are joining early, who are just joining into the course, to say, how do we go about finding this article? So more importantly, when you have sufficient reading of literature, and you can also access PubMed, there is a various abstracts that are available. You should always ask your colleagues, professors, and friends regarding what are the standard journals that one can look into and one can rely upon, because once you go to the World Wide Web, you have like enormous availability of information. But what is the credibility of all that is available? It's very important to select that, right? And reliable high impact journals, we already spoke about it, especially the specialty journals, which is confining to your specialty, because there is more in-depth discussion regarding your specialty. If you try to pick up a journal, pick up an article which is published in a very general journal, so it can be just a mix of many things, because it caters obviously to a mixed community. So selective or detailed studies may not be possible in that. Right. And then, of course, you can go onto the journal social media and find articles. So that's your first step. Now, once you have found a suitable article which you think is good to present, what we do next is you orally present these findings and methods of the article. And how do we go about doing it? Very important is to first read the article you have selected. Okay. And what happens usually is most of our postgraduates, as I have seen, I started my career in a postgraduate institution. So that was in 2005. So from then till now, this is one pattern I'm seeing. Everybody just prepares their presentation 2 to 3 days, max 4, 5 days before the date, even though they have been given the article in advance and date in advance. And they seldom read it. Or maybe they read it to make the presentation, seldom understand it. So it's very important to understand prior to making your PowerPoint. So it should be reading first, understanding what you have in hand, make your PowerPoint directory, and then only present. Okay, this is the order in which you're supposed to go. Now, what information should one include in your presentation? I'm sure many of you would have heard your faculty tell you, do not copy paste or do not put it as is. So then what information should we have on the journal, and how should we, should we have on our PowerPoint, and how should we have it? One is the title, authors and affiliations is very important. So it's very important to actually introduce to your audience what you're speaking about. Okay, so for example, we had a small introduction on the Journal Club today. So the audience becomes aware of what exactly we are going to be talking about. And a little note on the authors. He or she could be someone who's probably a known name in that particular subspecialty, right? And their affiliations, maybe they're from an institute which is very reputed. So that could be one of the impetus for you to select that article in the first place. So the title, authors, and affiliations. And another important thing is give sufficient outline of the story, a background as to why you chose it. What was interesting. Could be anything. It could be like it was a new technique, or it could be an area of your interest which you want to read further on. It could be the authors. It could just be the institute. You're just following one particular institution. So any of these could be the reason. So give a little bit background and about your study. What is the amount, what kind of study you're actually talking about. State the aims and major questions of this paper, right? So you have to put this on. Explain the results, methods used, and conclusions of the study, and put the results into the larger, in the context of a larger field. Also, comment on the validity of the methods, results, and conclusions. Now, these are the general information that you have to have on your presentation. Okay. Now, title, author, etc. I've already spoken to you about. An outline of the providing a background. I've told you how you came across the study, etc., and what additional information you need. Why is this important? Why did you actually come across the study? This is always nice when you actually introduce your article with a nice background. And always keep it very simple, right? For example, if the author has presented something very complex, something like this, you could just simplify it into this, which is the sum and summary of that complex table. It is perfectly okay to do that, because essentially you are conveying what the author is trying to convey, and that is what we're looking at. Next is explicitly state the aims and major questions of the paper. As it is very explicit. You see that is usually found in the introduction of the paper. And by explicitly stating the aims, it also helps to draw back the attention of the audience members who may have drifted off. Now, this usually happens. People start and then they usually drift off. So with that,
Can everyone please mute yourself? Dr. Yeshaswini, can you just keep the microphone closer to yourself?
Okay.
Sometimes the voice goes feeble.
Okay. Is this good now?
Very much.
Okay. Yeah. So explicitly stating the aims, it helps to draw back attention of the audience members, right? And it is also a measuring stick to assess if the study has actually achieved the aims it has stated. You know what I'm trying to say? So when you're explicitly stating the aims on a slide, okay, and the rest of the presentation that follows should actually be able to, you should be able to see if the study is actually in sync with the stated aims, or it has completely drifted away from it. Yeah. Right. Next. So after you have done the aims, etc., you have done the major questions, you have to explain the results of the study, including the methods used. Now, when you want to explain results of the study, of course, you will see that the results would have been explained or would have been brought forward in a lot of figures, right? So whenever you're presenting figures, and resizing the figures to fit your screen, please do not stretch them. This is very important because there is a lot of distortion that happens. And figures should fill the screen and be in a readable form at the back of the room. Yeah. So it should be big enough so that everybody can read it. And multi-part or complicated figures, if there are, you can just split it up nicely, right? So if there are multiple figures or multiple parts of a table, please split it up so that each one becomes very, very readable. And you can also use animation to build on complicated slides. So if you want slow release of information, you can just use animation. Describe the experiment completely. The method has to be completely described. And you do not have to present every figure or table. Sometimes there are just a table on demographics, which is just not significant. You don't have to put it up because it is not relevant to what is being discussed or what is the aim. So you don't have to go about doing every single thing. Next. How do you present tables? Make sure they're very legible. And if it's very large data, please consider retyping it. Please don't be lazy to just copy paste and expect everybody to have fantastic eyesight to read it. Please please retype it. And when you're doing the retyping, retype only the relevant, important information, right? Simplify. Wherever possible, you're allowed to round it off because you're anyway going to state a summary wherein it is rounded off. And you can use colors to show relative increase or decrease accordingly. Yeah, this is what I was trying to say. Keep it simple. Excuse me. I would appreciate if nobody annotates on the screen, please. I can see annotations coming. Please do not try practicing the annotating. You can disable annotations, Akhilesh. Yeah. So keep the results very simple. So from something like this, as complex like this, you can just afford to present it like this, which is very easily understood, and it's not complex because essentially the sum and summary of this is just this. Yeah. So you're not skewing the data in any way. You're not presenting something else. This is exactly what is in the study in a more understandable format. Right. Next, state the conclusions of the study and put the results into the context of the larger field, right? Meaning, when you're summarizing conclusions, you need to see what conclusions are directly drawn from the analysis of the results and what are speculated conclusions. You know what I mean? So some will be very explicit, right? Because of this, we can conclude this. But some of the conclusions may be, it is assumed that because of this could be the possibility. This is a speculative conclusion, right? So you have to identify clearly and you need to separate them. And also you need to see if all these conclusions drawn make sense based on the results. Sometimes the results may be saying something else, the results may be screaming something else. But if you do not pay attention very closely to the results, then you may actually be missing the point, or the author may have missed the point completely and he may be saying something else, right? So that's important for you to know. And has this article supported the generally accepted thinking, or has it refuted it? So is it in sync with the published literature, or is it something different? Now, this is something which you have to think about. And if it is something different, is the methodology stated and the discussions that have gone into coming to these conclusions, do they make sense and are they logical enough before you can clinically implement it? This is how you summarize on your conclusions. And has this article furthered thinking in the field? Has it benefited you? Did it give you a different perspective, right? Did it probe you to think into something more is possible in this particular area? Right. The last one on your presentation would be commenting on the validity of the methods, results, and conclusions in toto. And after that we have already, clarified as to how you go about the conclusions. Also, you just need to very logically analyze if the process has been very, in sync, it is very synchronized and meaningful. Now we need to critically evaluate. Everybody says critically evaluate this article. How do we go about critically evaluating this article? One is appraise the evidence base, the existing evidence. So you know that with the existing evidence, you will also by now you should be able to tell if it is in sync or if it is completely different. And if you go to the hypothesis, you have to critically look into what is a research question. Is the question well constructed? Right? And then does it observe the full? This is how you critically evaluate, mind you. So you have to go into every aspect of the article. It's not like what you feel about it. So you need to very objectively analyze it. What is the research question? Is it constructed well? Or is it ambiguous? Does it have many open, loopholes? Does it observe the basic four components, that is PICO, of a good research questions? And what does PICO stand for? One is the population. Who is the study population? Two is intervention, right? What was the intervention tested? Control, what was the alternative to the intervention that was compared to? What alternative was it compared to? Is there, so you're testing a new thing, is it compared to the existing or something else? And what is the outcome? What was the nature of the outcome measured? Then you need to go into the study design. How was the study designed? Okay, you have to think about, is it a randomized control trial? Is it a case control study? Is it cross-sectional, etc., etc.? Talk about, see if the study population is appropriate. Has there been randomization? If so, how? If not, why? What is the amount of bias control? Okay, you also have to close. So what happens is many times if the author has not explicitly stated these things, it is open to a lot of ambiguity. There may be bias, right? And how well is the inclusion and exclusion criteria written, right? So that is another thing. Then step by step. So you have finished the research question, you have come down, now you're looking into the methodology. How thorough is the methodology of this particular study? Was the approach quite diligent? So to correlate or to sync with the research question, have they followed an appropriate technique to do so? Have they been consistent, in terms of follow-up, in terms of recalling patients, in terms of doing procedure? And was the follow-up complete and consistently done, right? What were the outcome measures? Were they appropriate? Was the outcome measures measured appropriately? So this is where you need to really spend time on the article and you need to think on all these. And then are the statistical tools suitable and correctly interpreted for the particular study? So this is when you go through the methodology very thoroughly, you are supposed to look into each of these aspects. Then, is the statistics appropriate, right? What is the level of significance that have been used? What is the p-value that they've quoted, right? What is the power of the study that they have stated? Power of the study, usually it is done for 80% or 80 to 90%. So what are the chances when you say power of the study, 80%, meaning 80% it is going to refute the null hypothesis, which means you're going to find some difference. So you always have to set a power of the study. Then, was a power analysis carried out? Is the study sufficiently powered to eliminate errors? Have you thought about possible errors? And do the data exhibit low variability? Yeah. So these are the questions. So for this, there is no shortcut, but you have to do a little bit of, you need to understand and learn your research, I mean, biostatistics for this. Or you can always seek help. And then when you come to the results, right? Have they stated the results very clearly? Or if has any table been intentionally ignored? You know, when you submit the results, when you put forward the results, there could be various tables and interpretations. So has there been anything which has been ignored? Why? Well, obviously, if they have ignored it, they won't say why, but this is for you to think about. And is the result statistically significant? Okay. If it is statistically significant, next thing is whatever the significant value is it clinically relevant? Yeah. So there is a difference. Sometimes a clinically relevant value or a finding need not be statistically significant. Then you go into, see, if you are paying attention, you are looking at every part of the article, you have to stop, pause, and think into all these lines. So you're coming to the discussion interpretation. You discuss, the author would have already discussed the strength and weakness of the paper. Usually they do. Look out for it. And whatever you find is the strength or the weakness of the article, you need to see as well, right? And then consider, does the results support the conclusions, right? Is it syncing or is it something different? And consider the statistical significance versus the clinical significance, like I just mentioned, right? And does the article acknowledge relevant literature and other approaches, right? Is it quoting or is it stating the other literature that also is talking about the same things, or no? That is important to know, right? Now, what is the clinical context, right? How do you think this paper might change your clinical practice? Is it going to change in the first place, or is it something that you're just going to read and forget about? Because please remember, I already mentioned at the start that how do you select an article from a journal? I told about the impact factor. I told about the rejection rate of the journal. I also mentioned about the authors, but there is a lot of draws that gets published even in reputed journals. Meaning, at the end of it, what we have to see is this. When you read an article, what do you think is the quality of the article? It may have been from a very nice, but it need not be, or it just fails to be an article of that level. So, and in clinical context, how do you think this might even alter your clinical practice? Or it could be talking about something which is probably not even practiced. Sorry. So when you critique the article, I told you need to go through all the steps of all the different titles of the articles, and these are the things that you have to look for. And when you critique the article, you have to first credit the authors for the experiments conducted, because we are all familiar that there is a lot of constraint surrounding us. And in spite of the various constraints, this is not just here, this is everywhere. And despite these constraints, despite the difficulties, people put in efforts to research. So always when we're doing a critical eval, it is good to start with all the positive aspects of the article. So credit the authors for their experiment. And then you need to go out and very realistically say, are the results consistent with the hypothesis, or are there major outliers in the data? So you see, if you start working on a presentation for a journal club like 2 days before, obviously this amount of information is not something which you'll be able to devote time to. It needs time. What do you think, what sort of evidence would make the author's case stronger when you are critiquing it? And what evidence would you use to argue against the authors? Why would you say that you're not in sync with this? So you need to have evidence to speak for. And what case would a skeptical scientist make against the author's interpretation of their results? So there is a lot of thinking happening here. There's a lot of discussion going on here. So when you critique, you need to think about all these aspects. Yeah. Right. Now, all this is for the presenter. All this is for the one who's actually making the effort of putting the making the presentation. But what about the audience members? Please read the paper that is circulating. So whenever a journal club, is announced, if the postgraduate does not circulate the article, then he or she is like scolded left and right. So, but when that article is actually circulated, we have to make time to read that paper in beforehand. So even when you're on the other side and not presenting, so it goes for everybody, it goes for faculty, it goes for the other postgraduates. You have to devote time to read and understand this paper. Sorry. Yeah. Because only then will you be able to contribute to the discussion, right? And exchange your ideas. We have so many young minds with us, but unfortunately, very few of them actually come up with new, bright ideas. I think mainly because you don't devote time to reading per se. But if you have read and if they have a sound knowledge about what is existing already, then it becomes an amazing discussion. And so many studies, come up from that. We can actually think about very new studies, right? Now, if I have to summarize, it's very important to first, you organize a journal club, you arrange a time and location. All of us have journal club scheduled, and you choose and distribute the, article in question. You organize, you decide who the speaker is, and we have the date. This is pretty much standard because there is a set pattern, and you prepare for the journal club. Don't leave it to the last minute. No matter how many times we say this, it just keeps repeating. So I think this is a start to think differently. Choose a paper that is appropriate for you, that you can understand well and you can comprehend well. Know your background material very well and ask yourself a lot of questions about the article you have in hand before you present it. And then when you present the journal club finally, you provide a broad context of research, you simplify all the complex and unfamiliar concepts, and you present it in a very simplified manner, and you sum up important conclusions and keep it brief, keep it very short. Right. So, yeah, this is just to see. This is how a normal, the one on the left of your screen is a normal journal club wherein somebody starts presenting and the audience is pretty much snoozing. But we need to aim at the picture on the right, wherein you see the presenter is here and there is active discussion happening. Yeah, you can ask questions and active discussions happening there. The rule number one is when you start and you say that it's going to start at this time and and everything is set, when it is actually 8 o'clock, only the presenter is there. Yeah. So that should not be the thing. All of us should be on time. And looking forward to fruitful discussions is what we should aim at. Yeah. Right. So they remain a very enjoyable, productive way of staying up to date and developing academic skills for clinicians of various levels of seniority. This is not something which is confined to postgraduate training. Sure, it starts in postgraduate training, but this is something that all of us who are practicing clinicians need to do because we need to stay updated and we need to question. And it will be nice if you can have a bunch of your members meet up very informally and have discussions so that you can just upscale yourselves. Thank you very much. Now that's 38 minutes only, Ravi. Oh, you're muted, Ravi. You need to unmute.
Thank you, Dr. Yeshaswini. You have been really very comprehensive, going into each and every nuanced sections of it. You have told us about the importance of organizing and preparing for the journal club, and also how to select, the importance of reading and understanding before preparing a presentation, and also about the contents, each part of the presentation, how it should be, and very importantly, how to critically evaluate, uh, and the role of audience, very importantly. Uh, many thanks for that. I even though it is pretty comprehensive, I am sure many in the audience will have a lot of questions, because we have been through journal clubs many times, and I think many of us will have questions. I can't see any in the chat box. Shall I just start with you just ended with a guideline, enter your guidelines by asking us to keep it short. One major thing which I have been facing is that some of the journal club discussions tend to go on and on. What do you think is the correct duration for a journal club meeting? And what should be, there is no concrete guidelines obviously for any of these, but what do you think would be the time given for critique as well as for discussion? Critique is actually done by the presenter himself or herself, isn't it?
Yes.
And then discussion.
Yes.
What should be the proper duration as you feel?
So as I have seen and witnessed journal clubs, I've been part of journal clubs. These journal clubs that go endlessly, they completely either do not discuss the study or address the study at all. They dive into what is known as they dive on the topic discussion. So for example, if you're presenting a article on sagittal split osteotomy, and there is a particular study, and the discussion that happens endless is never about the study that is being presented, what the article is saying, what the author is trying to say, what is the study.
It should be focused on the article, isn't it?
Absolutely. That is the purpose of the journal club. What happens is there is a lot of discussion that happens on what is the sagittal split, how is the split done, why it is not done. Then this is completely forgotten. The study is the article is completely forgotten. So when that happens, you can just go on discussing on a topic. That becomes a very topic-based discussion. So you have to be very focused. For example, I told you I'll finish in 45 minutes, but I finished in 38 minutes because I feel I've conveyed what I had to convey in this time and we are done. So it's very difficult for me to say how much time should we devote for critiquing. But if you have done a good homework on your article, if you have understood it, you realize that you just need max 20 to 25 minutes to present that article. Right? You end up presenting a good article in a good 20-25 minutes time because it will be concise and to the point. And then if you are critiquing the article, whatever points you have, so the postgraduates usually need help, and that help needs to be given by faculty. He or she should do some homework and come up with some critic points themselves, because that stimulates their thinking as well. And if they have missed out in part of the discussion, it could be contributory. We just add on to that list. So by and large, I think 1 hour is a good time and you should be able to wind up.
Including discussions.
I think so, because on the national platform,
the
we have been
critic,
doing
I
so.
asked specifically because you had spent quite a lot of time on critiquing.
Yes.
You are critiquing each and every aspect of that research
Yes.
project.
This is when we are actually reading the article, Ravi. When we are reading the article, we need to pause and think on all these headlines, which most of the time is not done. Once you pause and think as you go, that is why I went in detail. And then once you're familiar with this, the process becomes faster. So let's say if methodology has been followed very explicitly, all you have to say the methodology is very explicit. There is no ambiguity. It is continuous. So you can just quickly talk about it. I can see Vivekanand raising his hand.
Yeah, Vivekanand has raised his hand.
It gives me butterflies now. Okay, Vivekanand.
Is that a comment or is that a question?
No, both. A very good evening to all. It is very nice to be here, and I was happy to listen to Dr. Yash. Actually, my question is, it's very simple. What is your stake to take a SR and MA? Because I have seen recently some of the journal clubs taking a systematic review and meta-analysis as a journal club article, even at national platform. So what is your stake? Because I feel myself when I keep writing a SR and MAs, I feel as a first year postgraduate or it may be second year, it is beyond their capacity to keep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when I was a chairperson, and so we all know this one thing. Everybody knows that SRMAs are at the top of the, evidence, and everybody wants to give in. They just send in. But as a chairperson, I also realized that this is beyond a postgraduate discussion. Because first of all, the one who's presenting needs to understand the SR. MA is even worse, right?
Yeah.
So at the postgraduate level, I would not encourage it, and I started asking only for original articles because that makes sense. It's more comprehensible. It is. Let's start discussing at their level first, right? And then slowly, once you have a nice knowledge base and you know what all exists, and you want to specifically zoom into any one point. So when you go like with more years of exposure and experience, then probably SR and MAs make sense, because then you want to find out the gap, you want to find out the specific answer question. So in spite of telling many times, requesting people to send in original studies, we do get a lot of systematic reviews and meta-analysis for our national JC platforms, which don't think completely does justice at the postgraduate level. I think we should focus on original studies, and then for a peer discussion amongst us, we can discuss on any one point. Maybe. That's
But
what
it is a meeting which involves more informed
everybody.
people. More
Yeah, but it is
informed at the
yeah.
postgraduate level, yes, but at a higher level, you can discuss them, isn't it?
You can. At a higher level, you can, because then it becomes at a higher level, you can, but not on a regular platform. It is tricky to do that. If you don't understand what an MA is, and if you don't understand the question behind a systematic review or the process behind it, then it's difficult. Because I've seen postgraduates concluding that the author has not done this in the study. First of all, they fail to understand that it's literature based. It's not like a study he or she conducted. Yeah, but no offense to them. They are still learning. So, yeah.
And also, while critiquing, I think it is important to know that no study is perfect.
Yes.
There have to be faults in there will be faults in every study, and even though you take
great care to structure a study, to err is human, and that is how you can actually make or think about how to make the study different, how to make it better. So when you want to study or take a thesis topic, instead of just blindly mimicking one, what we need to do is we need to make it slightly different, right? So we need to look into aspects that would make it a better study.
Any questions or comments? Anyone?
Vivek, is that satisfactory, Vivekanand?
Yes, I definitely agree with you. And one more thing is, how about the clinical controversies? Because majority of the people try to take clinical, because there is a section in the journal where you will have a clinical controversies which will be published.
Right.
Even though it's not an original article, sometimes there may be original article. So is that how much it is good to take as a clinical controversy, because the discussion will go in a very different fashion when it comes to clinical controversy?
Yeah. So like I said before, reading articles is a continuous process. So at the postgraduate level, bombarding them with a lot of controversies while they're even trying to understand how to write and how to read an article and how to understand it, it can be very confusing, because they're like, okay, what do I do? Should I do? Should I not do? Is this better or is that better? Right? So at the postgraduate level, it would be nice to keep it simple, and until they get more and more familiar with it. Sadly, what happens is many of us who, if we are not pursuing research, or if we are not active into academia, or it doesn't, we just fall out of articles reading, and then it becomes a nice thing for you to discuss, okay, this and my technique and this testing. So clinical controversies are nice amongst experienced peers if you want to do it. So, and otherwise, I think we should just stick to original research. The purpose of introducing Journal Club into postgraduate curriculum is to make them more aware of research, right? And help them to understand the process involved in structuring, and also in scientific writing and publications, and how to decipher this whole thing, which is scientific literature. So it's just an exercise. So I think at the postgraduate level, it is best to keep it to original research.
Yeah, simple and original research. So that we
Absolutely.
can, yeah.
But many people bring in technical notes. Many people bring in case reports. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
No, what they understand is that journal club is a journal club. Just you discuss articles. That is how they see it.
Yeah.
There is one question from Dr. Vipul. He wanted to understand about how to select cross references. What exactly are cross references, and
So
whether-
Vipul, thank you for the question. So I understand. So when you say cross references, the author himself would have quoted certain references as part of his discussion, etc., explaining that this particular point of support is this and that, right? And that article may actually be addressing a similar notion or something, yeah, which is related to this. Now, if you see that this article, or if you find that I have this article is not in sync with the published literature, or it is a little different from that which is published, what you can do is you can actually get hold of cross references which talk about the similar titles and similar articles, and you can quote them. That I would say would be needed. What I have seen is you finish presenting the article, you jump into cross references, and you just continue. It's like a continuous rut. And many PGs, because they don't understand, because they don't read, what happens is they want to present an article. They'll be talking about a topic which they less understand, and they want to speak about. So they introduce a lot of support data from textbook here, there, and explain about this process, this process. This also makes it long, Ravi. You asked what makes a journal club wrong. They end up converting the journal club into a seminar again, right? So cross references you put in only at the very end. Let's say in the process of discussion, you are asked that, can you, or do you have any other support that talks about this particular thing? You say, yes. I found an article, I found a study which completely is in sync with this, or which is totally diametrically opposite to these findings. So you can do that. The author himself would have done a lot of reference works also. So you can use relevant cross references. Many times cross references could also be borrowed to just help you write. You need to have it very relevant.
there are some situations where the references which author has given is actually in another context, and the author has not
Yes.
actually taken that
Taken
message
that.
which that author had meant. That is one area where I have found personally that cross references are important. You are surprised that this author is quoting a study, and you look into that study, and those researchers must have meant a different thing. That
Yeah,
is
so he is
something which-
using a particular statement to project his finding only,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
may be a
yeah.
completely
That happens
different
often,
one.
isn't it?
That happens often, yes. Which is why you need to quote relevant references, not just any random cross reference.
Dr. Stuti is asking, how important is it to select the latest article or recent articles?
Yeah. So, Stuti, what happens, the purpose of reading articles is to stay updated, right? It is to stay updated. So let's say reading some landmark articles that are still practiced today is absolutely a must, right? Even if you don't discuss on them, because it's a standard technique which has been followed for years. I don't think one needs to discuss on them, but one should definitely read them. And these landmark articles could be sometimes in the 90s, sometimes in the 80s, but they still hold true, right? That should be read. But the purpose of articles is to update yourself with what is current. So if you start presenting articles which is like 2 decades ago, in 2024, you pull out something which was in 2000, how relevant is it today? Because we are constantly changing, right? Our innovations are changing, our thought process is changing. If I just bring about, I don't want to sound controversial, but at this point, when I was doing my post-graduation and what the notion was on condyle, which was in 2003, I had used Ellis's articles for my thesis. And now if you see, there's so much of shift in thinking. So it really doesn't make sense if we discuss on articles which was then. And that is why we encourage you to take the latest articles, like last 10 years max. 5 years is very good.
Not very old.
It not very old. You have to stay latest, and you have to come with the new things. We need to upskill. We need to upgrade.
Dr. Vipul wants to know, is there any technique to find landmark articles?
Yeah.
That is, it would have been nice if there is a way to do that.
Yeah, I'm happy to
Hmm.
share some landmark articles that I have with you, Vipul. But yes, it would really make sense if you become member of certain important associations that give you access to scientific literature as a member benefit. AOCMF is one, IAOMS is one, and otherwise you'll have to subscribe to journals, which could be difficult. Or you could also if you have a good e-library, digital library in your institute, if you're working in an institute that supports it and subscribes for it, you could do that. Those are one of the proper ways of doing it. And Sci-Hub, I think, is popular with so many of them. And it's pirated nevertheless, but you tend to get many articles on it. But the best way to go about is through memberships. I'm happy to share some landmark articles that I have. You can reach out to me on my email. I can help you with some. And just yeah, if that answers your question, yeah.
Yes, there are no shortcuts is the answer, I think. Yeah.
You have to
are
find
trying to
them.
look for a technique to find landmark articles. That is
Yeah.
not that's no
Ravi,
answer.
when you and I were doing PG, we had to get our latest article references from AIMS Delhi, isn't it?
Yeah. Or we used to go to Manipal Library.
Yeah. So we used to go to various institutes that had good libraries, and we used to select their articles. And if we could get a list of articles, I have done that. I contact liaise with the librarian in AIMS Delhi, and he would give us printouts. So we have come that route. And now it is at your fingertips, and nobody wants to browse for articles. You'll all browse for movies,
Right.
Insta, social, whatever.
Natural human tendency.
Yeah.
Questions? Dr. Deepthi Simon,
Mm.
questions and comments? Dr. Senthil Murugan?
Senthil, you there still?
Yeah, I'm here only.
Good. Okay. Question for me, you
Excellent,
have
excellent.
any?
Nothing. You have enlightened everything. You have covered almost everything. Except
Yeah, she has been so comprehensive that there are few questions. Very few questions. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That shows that she has covered everything. Excellent. Great. That especially the criticism, no, that the basic criticism, how to progress with that, how to start and how to progress. That is very important.
Yeah.
So, and most of the institutions are not having patience, and they have to spend more time on these journal clubs and
Academics.
seminars. So this is going to be a basis for the research, actually. Fantastic.
Thanks, Senthil. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
There is
Bye-bye.
in some of the meetings, I have seen that the postgraduates are presenting the abstract. That is not necessary at all, isn't it? Because
No.
abstract is basically meant for somebody who is just scouting through the
Yes.
literature and just to find.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I have seen this, I have noticed this trend that postgraduates, the way they bring articles is they just read the title, and one or two might just read the abstract and they bring the articles. Like I said, they don't spend time to read the article, forget understanding it. Even when they're presenting it, they don't understand it, they just present it. It's all a lot of copy paste that happens. So you have to, so abstracts also, you can, if you want to skim through the article, you can just skim through the abstracts because it discusses if it is a structured abstract, please mind it. So a structured abstract will have the background, purpose, methodology, discussion summary, not discussion, summary, conclusion. So you can use that to, if you want to say, okay, this sounds interesting. So you need to spend time to know that you have to select this article.
What I was talking about is using abstract as part of the presentation.
No need.
First present the abstract and then.
I get it. No need. You instead, I would really like to see if the postgraduate can start, by introducing how I said how a little bit about the title, what caught their interest, what about if it could be the author, it could be the institute where it is from, or it could be just the journal that they like and they follow the articles that are published because they think it is authentic. And that's a nice introduction to
Or
start with.
talking about the subject itself. Why is it an important subject?
Could be, but what caught their interest? So this is how you introduce the journal club, rather than, I'm sorry, but everybody says, so this is today I'm going to present the journal club. The article is this, I'm going to present under these headings. First of all, you don't have to tell those headings only. The headings will come naturally, you know. So you just have to, you should use this as an exercise to upscale your presenter skills.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Further questions?
Matthew, sir.
Dr. Matthew Joss.
George Varghese, sir.
Jojo, sir.
Anything, sir? Okay. I think we're good.
Yes.
Do any postgraduates have any other question? Hey, Lata, hi.
Don't worry, it can be a foolish question. Anybody can
It
ask.
could be
Yeah.
anything. Okay, we are good.
Okay,
Excellent timekeeping, Ravi.
we have to call it a day.
Yes.
Once again, thanks, Dr. Yeshaswini. I really liked the way you have structured it, structured the entire presentation, focusing on very, very relevant points. At the end of the day, I believe we should, as part of the journal club presentation, we should always appreciate the authors for having gone through the study. When we endeavor to conduct a study, that is when we understand
Right.
what all impediments come up and how difficult it is to actually take it from the beginning to a publication level. So when you are critiquing at the same time, it's very important to appreciate the authors for having to understand, even though you don't verbally do it externally, it's very important to understand the pains that authors have taken for bringing it to the level of publication. Thank you very much, Dr. Yeshaswini. Thank you very much, AOMSIKerala State Chapter. So we'll call it a day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
ma'am.
so much,
Thank
Ravi.
you, sir. Thank you, all the participants. We'll be having another webinar very soon in the last week of March. And thank you, ma'am. It was a really wonderful presentation. So many
Thank you.
important points to take home. And thank you, Ravi, sir, for keeping the interactive session very lively, and all the contributors to the session. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Been a pleasure. Thanks, Ravi. Thank you so much. Thank
A
you,
lot of-
Akhilesh.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks. A lot of comments coming in, ma'am.
Yeah.
And one comment from Leda, ma'am. She's attending from the phone. I think that's why she was not able to respond.
Right. Okay. Good night, all.
Good night, everyone. Thank you all.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night, sir.
Good night. Thank you.